Today I'm going to be building a $500 and super underrated computer. And the reason why it's underrated is because this secret graphics card right here. And I'm saying it's a secret because Intel is brand new at producing graphics cards, but they are actually performing better and better and better, both in games and especially in productivity setups like Photoshop, video editing, and so on. What I didn't know yet was that the system is going to give me some troubles when it's done, so stick around to learn from some of my mistakes. Let's start with the motherboard right here. I chose one of the cheapest motherboards you can get for the AM4 series. It's an A52 motherboard, but this time it's from ASRock. I just made a build for $400 where I picked an MSI, but this time I could get this one a bit cheaper. Now this is as cheap and as scuffed that it's going to get for a motherboard. And I'm upgrading my 4500 last time CPU to a 5500 CPU. This is a very capable CPU of about $91 I paid for this CPU, and I also picked a CPU which has a cooler in the box, and I know it's not going to be the best cooler for this situation, but it's going to be good enough, and as this cooler is spec'd to be good enough for this CPU. And I have a Core 7 Engines DDR4 RAM, but for you I am recommending going with something called Silicon Power because they're simply just cheaper, and this is the cheapest RAMs I can get in EU. And I got this MSI Spatium while they were still on sale. Right now they are not on sale, but I'm going to be linking something else for the NVMe right in the description, then you can see it. The case is just an unnamed case. It's the cheapest case I could possibly find on Amazon, $29, just to make sure that I could afford the graphics card. Now this is the star of the show. This is the Intel A750. Now my power supply has not arrived yet, and it will very soon, because this graphics card I actually bought the wrong power supply from the beginning, because this graphics card actually requires not only one power but actually two power plugs in it. It requires both the 8-pin and the 6-pin PCI power. But the power supply I purchased the first time just didn't have the power available for this. So this is a very capable build, and I'm so excited to see how this will perform in some of the games that I love to be playing. Now the problem we are going to be facing here is that some games just isn't optimized yet, but Intel and ARC is continuously developing this, and they have just released some new upscaling features. That's kind of the same as DLSS and FSR for AMD. So I'm excited to see this. Let's start building this, and afterwards then we're going to test it in some games.
If you like this kind of video, then consider subscribing, because in my next PC build video I am making a $160 computer that's actually performing a lot better than this $500 computer. When I am building PCs, I like to open up the motherboard and just start by installing some of the first bits on the motherboard without putting it in the computer. You can either choose to just build directly on the case right here. I always also sometimes tend to build on this bag to get like the anti-static. And this time I'm going to remember this one, because my last build I forgot to put this inside the case because I'm used to boards where this is attached. But this is so annoying to install afterwards, so I had to take everything out to put this in back again. So I'm going to remember this time. I'm going to put it like this, because then it's in the layout that I'm going to see inside the computer. The first thing I like to install is always to install the CPU, and for this one, as I said before, this is a 5000 series. It's the 5500 from Ryzen, and in this I have the CPU in a small slot like this, and down here I have the cooler we're going to be installing afterwards. So let's start off with installing the CPU. Now the CPU has down in the corner an arrow in the corner, and that arrow needs to be installed in the corner with an arrow. It's right here. It's hard for you to see, but there's an arrow on the main board right here. Be careful when you're handling the CPU, because just one tiny dent in these pins right here. Wow, a tiny dent in these pins right here can actually make it so that it doesn't work. Now I'm going to align these right here. Should be aligned like this on my board. Oh, it just slits right in, and you put it in like this. Now the CPU is actually already installed. Afterwards, I could install the cooler, or I could install something else. And I'd like to start in my build right here with installing the NVMe disk. I can see it has a slot right here. Now in this motherboard right here, it only has one slot for NVMe. That's fine, because this is a budget build and we're not going to be using multiple NVMe's, and you can always just buy a bigger than 500 gigs that I'm using right here. There's a link in the description, because this is not the exact one that you can be buying, because I got this on sale. There's a slit right here in the NVMe here, and this fits perfectly just with aligning like this. And then you just give it a gentle push. And it's normal for the disk to like tilt upwards like this, and then be mounted with a tiny bit screw in this case instead. This, and be careful not to lose this, because it's very tiny. In my other motherboard I got 3 of them, but in this case I only got 1. Oh, I wish I had my smaller tools right here. As always, when you are tightening the screws inside of your computer, make sure not to do it too tight. This was easy install. It was the disk right here, and now I could either take the RAMs and put them in, or take the cooler. Normally, if you have a bigger cooler, you would like to put in the RAMs first, and if you have a smaller cooler, it doesn't really matter. But this time I'm going to just install the RAM first, and then I'm going to install the cooler for the CPU. The RAM has a slot right here. You need to open those. The RAM has a slot right here, or an indent that needs to align with this down here. And if this is the first time you're installing RAM, it can be quite daunting to push as hard as it's actually required to install the RAM. Because normally I would say if you have to push when you're installing some of the, especially all of these, then you are probably doing it wrong. But RAM needs a big push until it clicks right as it did here. I'm just going to install the other one like this. And then it clicks. Oh, the other one needs another push. And then it clicks, and then it's installed. In order to install the box cooler I have in this build, I need to. The cool thing about a box cooler is it comes with thermal paste already applied to it, and so I don't have to spend any budget on that. There's a tiny wire here when you need to plug it in. This called the CPU fan. But on this motherboard, I know that I have to just get these and detach them from the board beforehand. Sometimes I like to save these for later. I'm just putting it in the motherboard box. I like to save the motherboard box for each computer I'm building, and just maybe put in the box from the NVMe and from the RAM, so you can see what it actually was. Now the thing is with these AMD coolers, maybe this time it will align. Oh, no, this AMD cooler for this one, I would have liked to have this on the top, but yeah, as the last time I made a build like this, it has to go on the side, because we need to align these with the mounting bolts down here. Now when you're doing this and you are mounting this, every time you're mounting something in the computer where it has multiple screws, especially this, then make sure to just tighten just a little bit, and then go diagonally to the other side, and then just tightening this a little bit, and then go over and tighten this a little bit, and go diagonally again, and tighten this a little bit. And don't tighten too much, just go around like 5 or 6 times, and then just take it step by step until it's quite tight, because you don't want to over tighten it, and you don't want to make it crooked to the either side. This the CPU cooler is one of those things you actually want to have quite tight. When you're meeting some resistance, I'm meeting the resistance already. I don't want to like over tighten this, especially because this is a cooler that's weighs nothing. Some of the bigger tower coolers is a lot heavier for the board and needs a support bracket on the other side, but this is just very easy to install. Now I can take the CPU, I think it's called fan header, and then I can and then I can just plug it in this side. Remember these, if you have to push it, then you're probably turning them the wrong way.
Now the time has come to put everything we just built here inside the case. And I already made one mistake in this build, and this is that I purchased a power supply that I thought would work for this. I can always use this for another budget build, and I'm scavenging for the cheapest power supplies. But the fact is that this GPU right here, the masterpiece of this build, needs both a 6-pin and an 8-pin power to run. I don't know if it's possible to see on the camera right here. It needs both a 6-pin and an 8-pin. And the power supply I purchased the first time doesn't only have a 6+2 pin. And now I think that there is a possibility that I made another mistake, and that is, I hope that this graphics card will fit in this case, because the A750 is much larger than I ever expected. So let's see the case here. And this case is just the cheapest case I could possibly find on Amazon, because for these budget builds I'm going for performance and not for looks of it. Let's just see. This is a very short case here. This is supposed to be a micro ATX, and for me it's kind of starting to look like an ITX, but I hope it's still a micro ATX. It should be able to fit in the case, so let's hope. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the side panel off right here. Oh, it's an get rattly because of the cables, but it's so light, it's easy to take off these some thumb screws here, and make sure not to throw these away. Yeah, I think it will be possible to fit the graphics card in, because there is an opening here in front, but it may take some work. The first thing I'm going to put in that I forgot the last time is this I/O shield, or what it's called, for the motherboard, because the last time I forgot to put this in, and it was so tough to. I had to get everything apart again and to put it in, so I had to tear down my entire build in order just to put this in. Then some are putting in the power supply first, and some are putting in the motherboard first. In this case, I'd like to start off by putting in the power supply. Now this was the cheapest power supply I could find online that fits our need for both a 6+2 PCI cable and another 8-pin PCI cable. The Intel graphics card, besides being one of the best looking graphics card, is also a very powerful graphics card for only just slightly over $200. This, of course, being a budget PSU, is going to give us some problem with all of these cables, especially in a small case like this. We would have liked to have a modular power supply. Now when you're opening the back of the screws right here, there are tiny screws, and there are bigger screws. I don't know if it's actually possible to see this on camera, but the tiny screws, they are reserved for the motherboard. The bigger screws can be used for the case instead. Please don't mix those up. It's going to give you problems. You actually don't really need to put in all the screws for the PSU, for the power supply. I like to do it because it can produce some rattle not to have them all in. Now I'm going to put in the motherboard, and then afterwards I think I'm going to take the back plate off of this because I want to handle the cables a bit. But before all the cable management goes in, we need to test that everything actually works. Be careful when you drop this in, because these pins underneath here, you don't want to damage these. It's quite easy to make that mistake. Make sure they align with the back I/O shield right here, and then it should be perfectly fine just for you to mount it. Make sure when you mount the motherboard, you don't just take one of the screws and mount it all the way. Use like the same way that you are mounting your CPU and something else. Just twist it a couple of times and then do another one. For some of the motherboards, there is actually a guide on how to apply the right torque, what screws goes in where first, and then make sure to use the right screws. I just did it again. I used one of the bigger screws for my motherboard, and now I'm going to be struggling with getting that out again, and this can actually end up damaging my motherboard, and I hope it doesn't. So please don't make all the same mistakes that I am making. Now the hardest part by far, what I think of any build, is getting these connectors right. It's the connectors you need to connect to the motherboard in order to get the power on button to work. And I'm not there yet, but I can just do this from my mind. I always need to check the documentation on how these pins are going to get connected. In order to get the graphics card to fit, I think I need to modify the case a bit, and I don't know if that's even possible for me to do. I needed to remove this bracket at the front, simply because I have no chance of having any clearance for the graphics card with this in it. So before I'm going to put in the graphics card, I'm just going to make sure that all my front I/O is connected. Let's try and deal with this graphics card again, because this is simply, I should have maybe known that this is, I don't know if it's possible to see this, but this case is almost as long as the entire graphics card, but I think I can actually make it work. At the front here, it's really closing up the edge. Luckily, the front panel bulges out, so it will actually be able to fit when I, or so I hope it will be able to fit when I take this and close the panel on here. This was something else. Let's power it on to see if it actually works before we're going to handle the cable management. It looks like it's working, and it's completely silent. That's cool. Let me get this thing closed up and let's head over to the test bench to see how the Intel card is actually handling some of the games. I'm so excited to see that. We're going to do some of the testing from this gaming PC that's only $500 with the powerful Intel Arc GPU. Now the Intel Arc is not specifically designed for DirectX 9 titles like this one. CSGO, I'm still having the old version and not the new CSGO 2 version. But let's test it out. So right off the bat, I'm surprised by the stuttering here. And the FPS on 170. Ooh, I'm very surprised by the stuttering and that the GPU is working at To this point, I'm actually surprised that it's not performing better than this it's doing right now. Because I would have thought that it would have been like I tried this game on 1650 from NVIDIA. It's much less powerful card, and it does like consistently 300 or 400 FPS. So this is kind of surprising that it's not. Okay, no scope. After some time now, it seems that it's running a lot smoother than it did in the beginning. I think maybe some of the files needed to be loaded in. Now I'm getting consistently over like 200 FPS. Maybe, I don't know what. I've just loaded up Fortnite, and Fortnite asked me to use the settings that Fortnite wanted to use, and I'm just going to say yes and start out by launching into a battle royale with the settings that Fortnite recommends for this Intel systems. Normally I would say that the Fortnite settings that Fortnite recommends is not the best, but let's see. I can see that already it picked Direct 12, which I wouldn't pick because normally you lose some FPS from DirectX 11 to DirectX 12. But let's see how it's going to be going. And I can see Fortnite is also aiming for 60 FPS, and I would be more happy to be around the 165 FPS. Now, let's see Fortnite how we're doing here. We are at 50 FPS, but look at what Fortnite picked for us. It's, I would say, too beautiful right now for me to play. Also 50 FPS is too low, so let's go with the TSR low here, and let's set shadows off and textures to medium, effects to medium, post-processing to medium, and let's just see how this looks. We're still at 70 FPS. I would want it to be higher. And the graphics card and the CPU is really struggling. I have heat throttling in this system right now. So let's just go this with a bit lower to see. I think ideally I would have liked to have this on DirectX 11. Take a look at the temperatures here. We are at CPU utilization 100%. I think it's because it's still loading in all the textures. So CPU might be throttling a bit here. So this is a very hot, like my room in here is getting hot right now. Take a look at the temperatures. This is too hot. Like it's a really beautiful game, but it's very playable at this resolution, but it's too hot in the room and it's too noisy right now, so I need to do something with the... I think I need to go to at least in DirectX 11. I just restarted Fortnite in order to get it into DirectX 11, and now I'm going to running on closer to low settings in here. But the computer is really struggling with the heat of it all, and it's not a great experience, this one. This is not great. I think one thing that's really crazy about this is that in next week's video I'm testing a computer that's only $160 and it runs Fortnite better than this. This is not really that great. It actually also runs CSGO better than this one did. This is... It's getting more and more playable, but look at the temperatures. I don't know if you can hear the fan, but the computer is going crazy because of the lack of cooling in this system. So we're getting closer to 160 FPS, but the computer is struggling. My oh my, the computer is struggling. It's noisy in here. So I don't know if you can hear this behind me right now, but my conclusion is that this computer right here, it's so hot. It's heat throttling. It can't. The case is bad. It can't handle the heat from this particular GPU, and the CPU is like, I think this computer was not a great build for gaming. So I was thinking about selling it, but now I really don't know what to do because it can't really run Fortnite that well, and CSGO is not a demanding title and only doing 150 FPS. So and also this PSU, the power supply in this unit is actually also quite noisy. I've been unhappy with this from the start. I think I might scavenge some of the parts from this build and maybe put into another build, because I know there's a good CPU in there. I know that everything is just getting boggled down under the heat. So I had this idea on how to fix some of the things in the Intel Arc. First of all, I went into the BIOS and disabled XMP and disabled all sort of extra tuning that I might do, because I don't know how this works with Intel Arc. Already I can say when turning on the computer, it looks like it's much better. The GPU idle temperatures is lower than was yesterday. The GPU idle temperatures yesterday was so bad, so it looks like it's better. And I googled it a lot. People can set the power limit. I have opened the case now, but that's not to like give it better airflow or anything. That's just for me to monitor what is going on here. It is actually the GPU temperatures. I don't know if you can see the screen here. It's the GPU temperatures that is leaking up into the CPU that makes so that CPU won't cool down. We are at the lowest DirectX 11 settings and it still only pulls in 50 FPS in Fortnite. Now you can see the temperature. It's actually the CPU that's I don't know if it's possible to hear this, but there's a bit of noise also from the power supply. Now I'm getting 165 FPS in the lowest DirectX 11 settings now in Fortnite, which is manageable. And I think with better heat, maybe with better airflow and underneath the graphics card here, if there was some better airflow underneath here, it might be better. But this, I have never tried to have a build that runs this hot. I changed some things today, and it looks like the heat is actually better, and the FPS is actually better on the screen. My conclusion is that I don't think Intel Arc is ready for gaming, and this case I built in, this tiny case over here, is too small for the heat that this system produces. That's my fault. So I could have researched better on how the heat will build up in a system like this. But stick around, because I already purchased some parts to fix this, and I'm going to replace the GPU in the system, because I was thinking of selling this, and I'm not going to sell a system that overheats like this. So I'm going to replace the GPU and still have it under $500 and see how I can get the system up and running. One of the reasons why I'm really underwhelmed by this is in the next video I'm building this computer right here. It's a $160 computer that performs better than this $500 computer. So I think that was a complete waste of money, especially if you compare it to this old system right here with just some minor upgrades. Stick around on the channel, hopefully you will find that more interesting.